Hello world, I was Secret Test coming to you live from Web3. It took a few days to get a collective headspace. I really recommend to take some days to unwind, let your brain essentially regenerate on glucose. Once you're dabbling with burnout, you have to know how to essentially play the longevity game, and you don't always have to push through. So I didn't record over the weekend, and there was this internal dialogue of you have to record on a daily basis, but then the wiser counsel of me said it's okay, essentially focus on recovery and move forward from there. It's like an analogy of sprinting in a marathon. You are moving fast, you have to sprint, but you have to remember it's also a marathon, so you don't excessively sprint and pull a muscle or essentially burn out long term. Mental health is very important, and it's not an easy thing to take care of, especially in the space as how rapid things move. But just be metacognitive of your overall well-being and do what you can. Sometimes it's not within your internal control. I'm aware that sometimes circumstances just rely off reactions, and it's more of a process and wave that you have to write out. It's a condition, and there's variables that make things a lot more difficult. But regardless, optimism and faith and good health is something we should all strive to have. Okay, so um, we'll move forward from here and keep the optimistic tone ongoing. So today was an absolute amazing day all around. Throughout the weekend, and the main area of my priority task has been on, essentially prepping the Scholar NFT and writing. The area that I'm writing is on the semantic process to verify knowledge, skill, and identity on blockchain. And this has led me down a rabbit hole that tying it back to mental health, it could lead to mania. I don't say that lightly, that you can become lost, you can become obsessed, and you can go through such an intense internal dispute within yourself that it can carry a lot of weight. It's not something that's easy. Um, like the movie, I forgot what movie it was, about the writer who rents out the big hotel with his family, and he's so obsessed with writing that he ends up going crazy in the house. You'll be surprised how close humanity or humans, individuals, are from breaking. We could all be crazy if we repeat the processes and systems to lead insanity. You can see the laundromat or the laundry basket, because there's some chores today. But where this leads to is the articulation of ideas, in-depth processes, and the area that leads a lot of entanglement is that some of this is philosophical. Some of this is a process that cannot be described very simple in a linear process as it is in other areas like math, right? Where you have base understanding, you can describe the function, you can be confident that what you're saying is going to be true, verifiable, and undisputable if the logic and information is delivered appropriately. When you deal with areas that are more in the gray area, you have to word and articulate the expression of the thought in a certain manner that could stand on its own. It has to be unfalsifiable on its own. And that's a very difficult thing to do in this education spectrum. And one of the areas that has come to light for me that I became obsessed and fascinated with was semantics, which is the understanding of language and logic tied together, and information theory. Information theory goes down to the deepest roots of language, logic, philosophy, documentation, retrieval, leads into the fields of artificial intelligence, neural networks, and essentially how cognition and information could tie and bundle together. Right now, I'm reading an article on the mathematical process for consciousness. It just blows my mind how advanced and well documented some of these areas already are. Is just to an extreme depth that it's a small hole in the internet, and you have to be extremely on explorer mode to find it. But regardless, this process of articulating the system, this protocol that we want to create, it's not easy. And every day it's like exercising your mind with an uncomfortable stretch. You're pulling your mind to expand and develop in real time too, because you lead with the narrative and then you reach essentially a bump off that narrative, because when you there's levels of thinking. When you think about something, you can carry the narrative and you'll be biased with yourself. So you'll jump over bumps in logic or articulation when you think. And then even when you speak, you are articulating the thoughts real time. And if you hear yourself out loud and you get sensory feedback, you will essentially catch more of your thought process, because it's more collected through speech than as it is through thought. And writing is the step above speech because it's time-based. The medium of information is now text, and text doesn't have to be as fast as words, right? For you to watch this video and for me to be in the speaking tone, I have to speak a certain amount of words per minute. If not, this is going to be not a dialogue. It would be, who knows what that would be, right? When you just speak, say one word per minute or an arbitrary number. But what ends up happening when you input thoughts into text in a linear fashion, you will reach the mental capacity of your thought process. And this is where you have to develop further. You go do research, you back it up, you tie it together, you read what you wrote with the new research, you process the new research, and you develop further understanding. You write that new understanding, and then you keep it going. That's the crazy part, is that this new research that you develop, because you haven't exercised thus far, has to get exercised even further to keep the paper going. And this is where it's pushing it to the extremities for me. I've been in these domains that I'm writing about for the past couple of years, but articulating to this depth and to this level of just sheer simplicity. And that's what's also ironic too, is that this whole process has to be extremely simple, and you have to remove the complexity, and you do the complexity by understanding the new paradigms and new levels of information. So it's been a really wild experience, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm loving it. It's something that I haven't been pushed to this depth in a long time. It leads me to the question, like, wow, I'm actually doing this. I don't essentially get overwhelmed with a lot of projects. Building a startup was one thing, and it was a gradual process day in, day out, but this is more of a, can this even be accomplished? And can this be done and executed very, very well? And that's a big question, because once it's out there, that's your project. You will be able to update it, but the presentation of the first white paper, yeah, you had to do your homework to get to that point. So very excited to keep on working on this. This was majority of my day. One area that I was completely mind blown was with language, the creation of language, which is a field that I was researching. How there's a theory that humans essentially develop language by meshing sounds and logic existing in nature. And they did studies about how monkeys can give specific sound meaning. And if they do like a howl in a certain type of tone and delivery, that means it was a snake, or that means that was a predator. And the development of that, humans started to pick up over time. And then the theory of grammar and syntax came from hearing birds. Bird songs essentially were the pieces that the human mind was able to process with a sequence of the chirping, tone, and delivery, that humans start to get essentially the grammar syntax of bird songs, but then leverage the sound meaning that monkeys would do. And that was a theory, a linguistic theory on how language came to be. And then I also learned about hierarchy, about symbols, about art itself and how it evolved into alphabets and how alphabets became mediums of meaning and how information just started to be delivered much faster. How first writing was in stone, then it became into paper with papyrus. Papyrus. I, I know once I finished the video, I'm like, did I say that right? And I know I probably didn't. But the fact that the craft went from writing on stone, which is probably chipping, to using a pen and stroking, that advancement accelerated the delivery of information, and individuals were able to write faster. There's a great line that said, the medium of text made thought lighter, or something along those lines. I'm like, wow, that's really profound, because thoughts became lighter because you can just write on paper instead of chipping at stone. And then nowadays we have text interfaces, you just type away. So that's awesome. And the whole end goal here is to get to the deepest points of information theory, systematically and linearly articulate this form of thinking, integrate to this outcome of what is knowledge, what is skill, what is this education identity, and then tie it into an algorithm that does mathematical functions, computation, that gets added onto the blockchain, and people give this a consensus mechanism to validate that it's true or that it works for people. Because being educated will not be a outcome that will be objective in terms of matter. So that leads to the question of the subjective matter, which is information. How does it get encapsulated and projected out, which falls under information theory. Okay, so that's the rift in the area of that. I'm gonna be doing a lot more information on Scholars NFT on my Twitter and on the Discord. So keep an eye out on that. I'll be probably doing more. Someone requested a specific video for NFTs, but I asked what areas like utilization, marketing, creation, code, smart contracts. So if they get back to me, I'll do a specific video on that. But it's an exciting time all around. Web3 information accessibility itself, and we're here to build, we're here to learn, right? We're Auto.x, we're the builders and learners of the future. So if we keep this up, years from now, we will have a complete different system process, and we'll be ready for it. We'll be ready for the future by putting our head down and working today. All right, so with that being said, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.